How many five-star generals were there? Well, we'll talk about one today from the MacArthur Memorial in Norfolk, Virginia. So this is the MacArthur Memorial in Norfolk, Virginia. It's located at 198 Bank Street, on the corner of Bank Street and East City Hall Avenue. And this is the old City Hall of Norfolk. This was built in 1850. And actually, during the Civil War, when the Confederacy surrendered to the Union, they did it right on the front steps right there on May 10th, 1862. So this building was offered to General MacArthur to be a place to hold his archives. And when they offered him this building, he said, I'll take you up on that as long as I'm allowed to be entombed here with my wife. And they said, absolutely. So the general is actually entombed here with his wife. They're in the Rotunda, right underneath the dome. And the actual architect who built this building actually is the same architect who did the Capitol building in Washington, D.C.
Mind blown.
So the dome is basically the same Italian Renaissance design, and it's beautiful.
I'm blown away! You're blown?
So the statue was put out here in 1985, and MacArthur passed away in 1964. This building opened to MacArthur as his memorial in January of 1964, and then he dies in April of 1964. His body is laid out in state in this building, and 10,000 people come to see him. So let's go inside. So here we are in the crypt of the Rotunda here at the MacArthur Memorial, and this is where the general is entombed beside his wife. He passed away in 1964. She actually passes away in 2000. She is laid to rest, though, on his birthday on January 26th, 2000. He would have been 120 years old, but he has a laurel wreath, and that is Roman, signifying victory, and she has a magnolia wreath because of her Southern heritage. But these are the flags of all the commands that General MacArthur was in charge of. It also has the list of everything that he accomplished and his titles over here, and then all of the campaigns he was involved in around. Those are laurel wreaths as well, again signifying victory. One of the great quotes is this quote right here, and this is what they call MacArthurism. So you've heard McCarthyism, which is about communism. This is MacArthurism. MacArthurism is anti-appeasement. It's they will suffer the consequences if you don't see a victory through to defeat. You're going to suffer those consequences of a prolonged war. So we're just going to do a quick overview of the memorial. There's 9 galleries that chronologically go through his life, and there's artifacts that support his life, and the MacArthur Memorial is responsible for being the custodian of those artifacts. His connection to Norfolk, so we get that question often. Why is the general in Norfolk? It's because his mother is from Norfolk.
I love you so much, Mama. I love you.
She was born here, she was raised here. 2 of her brothers actually fought in the Confederacy, but she marries a Union officer, so her brothers don't come to the wedding. And they're actually married in Norfolk as well. So that is his connection to Norfolk, plus he was offered the building. But this is his mother, right here. This is the connection to Norfolk here. She has 3 boys. Douglas MacArthur is the youngest. They have a middle child who passes away, and he is actually buried here in Norfolk. He dies of the measles very young. This is their home that was here in Norfolk. It's called River Edge. It is no longer there. There is a park that they use the same bricks, and that's the last time Douglas MacArthur was actually in Norfolk in 1951 when they dedicated that park to his mother. But that's his mother's family home. That's his connection to Norfolk. General MacArthur went to West Point. He's one of the top graduates that West Point has ever had. And he graduates in 1899. He's following his father in military career and service. He's very much influenced by his father's military career and service. They actually will be the first father and son to be awarded the Medal of Honor. His father will get it for the Civil War, and Douglas MacArthur will get it for the Philippines. So this exhibit shows trench warfare, World War I. MacArthur is considered the bravest of the brave in World War I. He becomes a brigadier general at age 38 because of his performance in World War I. He has a cigarette case that says, from his division, saying, "The fighting dude and the bravest of the brave." After World War I, General MacArthur comes back and becomes the superintendent of West Point, and then he helps usher in the Olympic Games. He's actually the ambassador for the 1928 Olympic Games. This is a young General MacArthur, World War I General MacArthur. What's that, General MacArthur? Subscribe to Walk with History? Okay. So in 1935, Douglas MacArthur is advisor to the Philippines, and in 1941, tensions are arising, and Hawaii and the Philippines are what both get bombed on December 7th, 1941. Everyone thinks of Hawaii, but actually 9 hours later, the Philippines will be bombed. And that's when MacArthur leaves the Philippines. He gets to Australia. He says that famous saying, "I shall return." We actually have it on the wall up there. And he says that from Australia, he's made the Supreme Commander of Allied Forces Pacific by the President and by the British and all the Allied forces. And so he starts his island hopping campaign. So he starts to fight back by cutting off supplies and ammunition to the Japanese forces on all these different islands. And it's a very effective way of fighting back against the Japanese. So this mural here is depicting him returning the Leyte landing, October of 1944. So this is probably my favorite exhibit here. This is about the surrender on the Missouri, the second day of September, 1945. So you'll see all the Allied force commanders, you'll see the Japanese representatives to the Emperor, and MacArthur oversees the surrender on the USS Missouri. This is a recreation of the actual papers. They're in the National Archives, but the actual pen is here. So that's really cool. It happens in Tokyo Bay on the USS Missouri. We have some of the actual teak wood from the USS Missouri. So that's what makes it so cool. MacArthur does and doesn't get a lot of credit for is he rebuilds Japan. After the surrender of Japan, America and the Allied forces have taken over Japan. He rebuilds it, helps them build a democracy, helps them have a constitution, helps give women the right to vote for elections. So MacArthur is instrumental in all of that. Of Japan. This is about Sadako and the 1,000 Paper Cranes. If you haven't read this book, it's a great book. It's a children's book. My mother read it to me when I was a little girl. Sadako is seen as a child of peace for the Pacific Front, much like Anne Frank is seen as a child of peace for the Western Front, for the European side. And Sadako was a victim of Hiroshima and ended up getting leukemia. And there's a Japanese folktale that if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, you get granted a wish. But she unfortunately succumbs to her disease and dies, but the crane and Sadako are still seen as a vessel of peace. And so we have a display of 1,000 paper cranes here at the MacArthur Memorial. So what happens after World War II is Korea. You're gonna have North Korea invade South Korea. and then he becomes commander of the UN defending South Korea. And he presses on. There's an Icheon landing that is probably, they just annihilate North Korea, and they push all the way to China. And as they're going to invade China, the Chinese come back full force and fighting. And so MacArthur wants to fight. He wants to win. And Truman doesn't want to do that. Truman wants to appease. And so there's a stalemate. And he doesn't want his men to die for a Thai war. That's what he says. I don't want my men to die for a Thai war. And Truman relieves him of duty because he feels like he's just going to keep pushing on for war, because that's what MacArthur believes in. He believes in if you fight, you win, or don't fight. And Truman just wants appeasement. And so he fires him, and MacArthur comes back to America. What's that, General MacArthur? Follow Walk with History? Okay. So this is a famous mural after he comes back to America after the end of the war. He gives this address to Congress, and it's "Old soldiers never die, they just fade away." He's welcomed home as a hero. He does this huge American tour. He's given keys of cities, and he's seen as a hero. He has saved the Philippines. He has saved Korea, South Korea, and he basically helped win the Pacific Front for World War II. He's welcomed home as a hero. This is a recreation of the general's desk. And these are probably the most famous artifacts that everybody wants to see when they come. This is the cover and the glasses and the pipe. This is what everybody wants to see when they come here. And that's the real deal. So another part of the MacArthur Memorial is the MacArthur Visitor Center, and that's where we're at right now. You can see all the flags above me. This is the Great Hall. In the Visitor Center, there is a gift shop, and there is a exhibit, and this is kind of a changing exhibit. This exhibit right now is to MacArthur in the media, and there's also a movie that you can watch, a 27-minute movie. But the cool things about this exhibit that I want to show is the car. So we have this awesome car that was MacArthur's means of transportation. And that is here. We have pictures of him in it. The movie's made about MacArthur. So we have pictures of Gregory Peck coming here to learn about MacArthur before he played him in the movie. There was a MASH episode about MacArthur, and this was in the officers' club, this picture in the background. And this MacArthur drives by at the very end. They're planning for this visit from MacArthur. And then at the very end, he just does a drive-by, and he salutes Klinger, who dresses up as the Statue of Liberty. As I told you, he was welcomed back to America with a hero's welcome. So a lot of cities gave him the key to the city. And these are the keys and what it looked like. People just really loved MacArthur. He was on plates, he was on pipes, he was made into figurines, he was in comic books. one of 5 five-star generals. It's no longer a rank that is given out, and it's really a rank of wartime necessity. But General MacArthur was one of the first men to achieve that rank in December of 1944. And if you're ever in the Norfolk area, please come out and visit the MacArthur Memorial. It's free. The city of Norfolk thinks it's important that people learn about their history and learn about this hero of World War I, World War II, and Korea. So it's here for you. It's waiting for you. Please come and see it, visit the gift shop, and on to my next walk of history.